You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code DIEHARDS, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
Hello and welcome to the Football Diehards podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lonero, on Twitter at Justin Lonero, along with my co-hosts, Mr. Bob Harris on Twitter at Football Diehard, and Mr. Kyle Dvorchak on Twitter at FF Kyle the Kid. Mr. Harris, the Super Bowl is here. The regular season is done. It's amazing how quick it goes. What is going on tonight in Albuquerque, New Mexico?
Not a damn thing tonight. There will be a Soulfly show at the Sunshine Theater, though, on Friday. I'll be attending Insight and Anesthesia also playing. So the concert season begins for me because the work slows down. I don't got to stay at home. I'll go see some damn shows.
That's right up your alley.
Yeah, Bob, they came in and cuffed you from your desk?
I'm going to unchain myself from my desk. I have written maybe only, a couple thousand words today, and that seems like more than enough. And Kyle Dvorchak, how are you, young man?
Not bad, not bad. It was a weird championship week, but I truly think we got some awesome football. That should be, can we just, instead of doing any sort of, no more Dolphins games, we just cut Dolphins game out and we replay these games?
I don't know. I think the Dolphins are fantastic. So we had the Rams beating the Saints in 26-23 in overtime. The Patriots defeating the Chiefs in Kansas City, 37-31 in overtime. The first time in the history of the league that both championship games, conference championships, have gone into overtime. They're both fantastic games, assuming you're not a Saints fan or a Chiefs fan or a fan of good refereeing or any of those things. So, first we'll touch base on what everyone's talking about, the horrific non-call. I think we can all agree it was a horrific non-call. I'm kind of with, I heard a quote by Jerry Jones today basically saying, look, officials it's kind of part of the game. They make bad calls. You have to deal with it. You assume that they aren't done out of bias because they're not. And, I get all the conspiracy theorists among fans. You're looking for reasons and explanations why your team succeeded or failed or was shut out, whatever. And it's easy to point the blame. There were many plays in that game. So, Justin, where are you at on the whole bad call thing?
Look, we've watched a lot of football, so we've certainly seen pass interference calls that are just, you're going, what, you can't touch them, and they're costly. So something like that is as blatant. It looked like, Hulk Hogan coming off the ropes and nailing the Ultimate Warrior just right in front of you. There
was 4 penalties they could have called there. Literally.
Right.
So,
and the fact of the matter is, well, that's very true. And the fact of the matter is, and I said this last week, I'm not one that thinks a single play can determine the outcome of a game completely. There's a series of events, whether it's baseball, basketball, football, hockey. It's unfortunate. I think something needs to be done because this season as a whole, I feel like a lot of the topics of conversation has been how poor the officiating has been, and it's crucial. You're hearing about lawsuits. There could be civil lawsuits going on.
Yeah, that would be silliness. What we're hearing about silliness, I think, would be
right. And what happened with the Saints last year in terms of Stephon Diggs, that was incredible too. They all feel a little snaked in. Personally, I want to see Drew Brees, Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. It would be nice. I suppose something as blatant as that, in my opinion. It was horrific, and I think the three of us are in agreement. Going further, how do you prevent something like that from happening again in such a, integral, it was a split decision and you can't go back on it. So what do you do about it in 2019 and beyond to rectify things?
A thought and a question. First thought is, I didn't like the way Soprano ended. Can I sue them for a crappy ending?
Right.
Where is this going with the lawsuit thing is my question, right?
Yeah, probably nowhere. Nowhere.
Let it go. And to Kyle, to you, so to me, the danger is overreacting. Because we are an emotional people, apparently, and everything that we see makes us angry, upset, or hurt, or something, and we tend to overcompensate. I kind of am of the school of, this is part of football, like bad weather, like lousy quarterbacks.
True.
There are just certain things you have to learn to live with if you're going to watch football. but they can make adjustments. What is a logical adjustment to you?
I'm pretty sure this is used in, if not every, most soccer leagues where when you get fouls called, they just go to the booth and review them, or there's an independent review process where that happens in challenges, right? There's we're going to go to you live to New York, see what they have to say. Yeah, they're saying this should be a challenge. You know, we get the independent review of challenges in New York says this play needs to be looked at or whatever. I'm not sure why we don't have that for specific plays. I think there need to be some sort of process of which plays can and cannot be reviewed. If it's something more subjective, you just, like challenges, go with the call on the field. But obviously this was not that. I think that's probably the most straightforward way. But then again, we could also have something a bit more drastic, like Roger Goodell reverses the outcome of a game. I think that's clearly number 2 option. Anybody else?
No. No. Look, and that's tricky. That's my question. I mean, clearly this is an egregious, and I'm not saying it didn't have an impact on the outcome of the game. Many other things did as well. I also heard an argument that the Chiefs should have got a chance with the football in overtime because, damn it, that Mahomes kid that Justin loves ever so much would have certainly scored a touchdown and would have been a whole different ballgame. Except they did have a chance to get the ball back. It's called stopping the Patriots on 3rd down, and they couldn't do that. So, I mean, that's, look, I think we tend to go overblown. I do think there are some, we see adjustments, and the competition committee will undoubtedly look at this. And, but we see a tendency in the NFL, in the preseason, the officiating seems to have an objective to teach the players what they're going to be calling, right? So they're educating you, like, this is how you can't hit. So they call the games a little closer. Then as the season goes along, they get a little less close. And then as the playoffs hit, I think they tend to let the guys play. I wish they would. Maybe it's just me wishful thinking. And so I wonder if this wasn't a case where they just, they were 2 hands off, because that official was standing right there. I mean, clearly it was not it's not like you didn't see it, right? So that's, I guess that's where I'm at on this. And again, I think, we're letting we're letting this single thing kind of cloud the fact that otherwise we saw some fantastic games. Did I mention they both went in overtime? Did I mention that's never happened before? Did I mention it was great viewing all Sunday afternoon as long as you're not a Saints fan? And look, I get it, Saints fan. You're mad. That's because you're a fan. I would expect nothing less. So I do think maybe there's some common sense things they could do. We'll see. There's no common sense, though, at all. Nothing explains Sean McVay's usage of, or lack thereof, of Todd Gurley, other than the fact that Todd Gurley is hurt more than they'd like us to believe. Am I wrong, Justin?
He's one of these guys. We talk about the bell cow dying in the NFL, and I think we're seeing that. There's only a handful left, right? And a lot of teams have committees, and it makes sense from a financial standpoint. Carry a few running backs, preserve the bodies. Different running backs have different roles. We've seen C.J. Anderson come in and look, resemblant of the guy that we used to see in Denver. But I think the fact of the matter is, Todd Gurley gets the football as much as anybody in the league at this point in time.
4 carries was not as much as anyone in the league against the Saints.
Right.
Throw that out there.
So he's dinged up. And like a major league pitcher, come October, after 30 or 40 starts, I mean, he's human, right? So he might not have the legs that he had in October or late September. And I think you're starting to see that with a guy like Todd Gurley a little bit, because, when you get the ball close to 400 times, I mean, I think it's just, he's human. Is the timing piss poor? Yeah. Does it surprise me? Not at all. I think they're very fortunate that C.J. Anderson has been able to come in and do this. Like Kyle was saying the other day, and there's a committee. They formed somewhat of a committee, which is, we're not really accustomed to seeing Todd Gurley share at all. In fact, he's been Jared Goff's, safety blanket. So it'll be interesting to see what type of volume he has in the Super Bowl against Dallas. He was Todd Gurley, 16 carries, under 15 rushing yards. Not so much involved in the passing game, but look, Bill Belichick will be prepared to face a Todd Gurley that he anticipates getting the ball 25 to 30 times. I think if the Rams are going to win, Todd Gurley needs to be a big part of that, because after all, he is one of the best running backs in the NFL.
I'd like to give Sean McVay credit for a level of three-dimensional chess that allows him to convince Bill Belichick that somebody other than Todd Gurley is the thing they need to stop in the Super Bowl.
Sure.
You know, like they did Marshall Faulk in the,
wow. Yep.
Right. So
punched him in the mouth.
But I'm not sure I'm going to give him all that credit. I think there's something the matter with Todd Gurley. Kyle, on the other side of the football in this game, Michael Thomas, I laid off him in my DFS 3 and out column. He was my out, just more because of the money. But he has these kind of games, right? We all know that they're possible. When you watch this game, what were your thoughts on his performance? What was behind the low workload?
I think it was just a matter of a lot of teams just choose to take someone away. It's something that a lot of teams scheme for, is that take away the best weapon or take away the weapon you're most apt to take away. And with a more healthy cornerback and secondary core, I think that's what they opted for. And then Michael Thomas, in terms of these, the true number one receivers of a team, has a lower than average depth of target. So when you do that, what happens? You give it all to Alvin Kamara. So I think that's exactly what they wanted to do. And the response was give it all to Alvin Kamara. So I'm not awfully shocked that this happened. And like you said, this thing can just happen. Like wide receivers who get 10 targets in a game, that's incredibly rare. And then 10 targets in a game isn't a lot of the actual game that happens. 10 targets isn't a ton of the plays when you think about a running back who gets 18, 19, 20s and additional targets. So just that's a lot of variance packed into a very small sample. So it's not awfully surprising. I think the Rams did what they wanted to do. And then we saw it, by the way, Bob, great call on that. But we saw it pan out with Alvin Kamara getting all that volume.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I think that was the plan last week, was to pay up for running backs, not named Todd Gurley, it turns out.
Right, exactly.
So we looked at the Patriots. And look, the Patriots cheesecakes, Damian Williams lit it up. Sony Michel, big game. Rex Burkhead, big game. James White, he was there too. I mean, it wasn't the 15-catch game, but he didn't ruin you in PPR formats. So we looked at what the Patriots did in this game against the Chiefs. And first, let's talk about defensively. They didn't stop Patrick Mahomes, but they did limit the guys like Tyreek Hill, 1 catch. I mean, it was a big catch, granted. Travis Kelce, 3 catches, 23 yards, had the TD. Justin, just looking at the Pats defense, what did you think about how they handled the Chiefs?
Well, I think they did what they wanted to do, and I mentioned it last week. I mean, Tyreek Hill went wild the first time they played. So they kind of removed him from the game. He did have a big chunk play. He's tough to completely eliminate, the cheetah, right? But they did a pretty good job overall. And this defense has been fantastic over the last couple of weeks. They put a lot of pressure on Patrick Mahomes, 4 sacks. And from a fantasy angle, I think they just ended up with 3. But like Kyle said last week, I mean, this was going to be a crapshoot in terms of what defense we were going to pick, because we anticipated a lot of points. The Patriots have one of the best secondaries in the game. I mean, Gilmore, McCourty's been fantastic, and PFF had him right next to the Chargers at the season's end. It was fantastic, and I think Bill Belichick wrote up a perfect game script. In fact, that game, if Tom Brady had not thrown an interception early, which he had not turned the ball over in the red zone in, I think, 60 to something like 80, maybe 80 trips, I want to say, to the red zone. I thought it was going to be a blowout, an absolute blowout. It turned out to be closer than it was. But the Patriots are going to run something similar for Goff. Put some pressure on Goff. Flowers has looked terrific. Kyle Van Noy is terrific. So they are peaking at the right time. And if you asked me 6-8 weeks ago about this Patriots team, I would say, they got a chance, but I think the Patriots are going to win the Super Bowl. I don't have a bias to them. I really don't. but they look good to go to Kansas City. To go to Kansas City against this Patrick Mahomes kid that you guys were, kind of apprehensive about, and that I was, cautiously optimistic about all season long. And by the way, he made some fantastic throws, despite some of the stuff that he should have done, and that'll come with maturity over time. Patrick Mahomes threw a couple balls, just the arm torque, Brett Favre-esque, moving around, climb in the pocket a little bit. It really is a beautiful thing to and of course I'm just joking around. You guys are Mahomes lovers from day one, and he certainly proved me wrong. But the Patriots defense are good. They're
right.
good.
I was going to say I agree with pretty much half of everything you said. Everything you said about the Patriots defense, and nothing you said about not being biased towards the Patriots. But actually, your analysis was spot on there. On the offensive side of the ball, and kudos to you, Kyle. last week for talking about that Kelsey Gronk stack, which would have landed you a few points. It would have been nice if Gronk scored, but he was fairly busy, 6 catches, 79 yards. Kelsey not as busy, but did score the touchdown, so an affordable stack there. And certainly if you were playing any other tight ends, Dan Arnold almost came through for somebody named Bob Harris, but not quite. Thankfully, Philip Dorsett lit me up. But so we're looking at this offense. Your thoughts in general, especially on the backfield, because the convolution is growing, right?
Yeah, I think. Sorry, I wasn't sure who you're talking to. Yeah, I think we're just seeing everything can be good in the backfield because this offense is so potent and because they're not committed to any specific back like we saw with Todd Gurley for, the entire season. I think it just, everything can be good. And also, I believe this matchup of these two teams features the lowest passing total touchdowns through the playoffs, maybe ever, because they've basically both just been dominated by good rushing attacks or good receiving backs in terms of James White. I am interested, though, to see what they do in the red zone, because that was a place where you get that sweet Rex Burkhead money. Not getting a ton of carries, especially 2 weeks ago. Didn't get a ton of carries, didn't dominate the team's touches. Sneaks in one into the end zone anyways. Now I think it's going to be a matter of playing ownership more than anything. If you think people are going to dominate one way, say Sony Michel again, I think the ownership will not be proportionate to their chances of leading this backfield and leading the slate in scoring. So really that's like the primary thing to me. I don't have the best lean on who's going to score because at this point it could be anyone. I'm eyeing you, James Devlin. But I do, at least I think I can get a better idea of where the ownership is going to lean initially. I'm thinking Sony Michel and also some sneaky Rex Burkhead. So I kind of want to double down on James White, but we'll get into that next week.
Yeah, we will.
My initial thought is play the people, don't play the game.
Right. There'll be tons of content for us next week. We'll be rolling through all the Super Bowl, slate, the DFS versions of that. We'll be looking at mostly more of the prop bets too, because there's tons of that going on, and that's always a good time and can be kind of revelatory towards what our expectations are for the outcomes of the game. Although Justin's is a foregone conclusion because he's a homer. I was just kidding, man. Well, no, not really kidding. So let me just, touch on a couple things, a few items of the week. There's a Pro Bowl game. They call it a game. I call it like a day off. I haven't turned on the Pro Bowl. It's been a couple years because they don't actually play the football. Justin, your take.
I'm optimistic that it's every year that it's going to turn out to be better than it is, and then you find out
because it's a low bar. I mean, it wouldn't be hard for it.
No, it can't be worse than last year, guys. Right?
It's terrible. It was nice to see him in Hawaii. Now it's where in Orlando. Christian McCaffrey didn't find his way onto the roster. I just tweeted something out earlier tonight. Got over 100 receptions. Christian McCaffrey should find his way on the NFC roster. We know that they have a lot of excellent running backs.
This just in. Yeah. Not everyone wants to go.
That's true. And there are replacements, which is why Alvin Kamara is playing. Look, it's an all-star game. It's probably the weakest all-star game by far in comparison to Major League Baseball or even the NBA. But you'll get to see DeAndre Hopkins. You'll get to see Tyreek Hill. There's not a lot of hitting.
I like the part where the linemen just stand up and grab each other's shoulder pads and don't actually try to do anything. Kyle, explain to me how this is a game and not an exhibition or something a kinder or gentler word for game.
Why would you do this to me? Give me an impossible task. It's not. It's absolutely not. It's not. Bob, I haven't watched in a few years either. The one thing I do want to point out is we're getting more of the extracurriculars, the skills challenge. I think they're playing like a dodgeball game, which is cool. It genuinely is for the people who are tuning in because and hear me out. A lot of football, or at least I guess when you look at another sport, look at basketball. I've heard this said before, and it sort of makes sense that like when you're playing with helmets and when you're getting 22 people on a field, there are a lot of weird things that factor into football where you don't get personalities of players. You don't get the sort of drama you get in the NBA. And hopefully we just get more of the players' personalities if we start to learn who they are more. Because like I've seen, Christian McCaffrey play a lot. I won't get the chance to ever know who he is. Maybe he's a really cool guy. Maybe they're very entertaining. So very seldom do we actually get to know and vicariously watch the players as people. So hopefully we get some personality out of the other events, and I do think this is a good chance for that. Maybe, entertainment in a different way. In terms of football, let's, another day.
In general, it's that they don't get the same kind of attention that NBA players do. And for exactly the reason you said, Kyle, the helmet. They hate the helmet. Love the helmet, but hate the helmet. Larry Johnson talked to me once about, why he appreciated fantasy. And it's because it gave him a chance to connect with fans in ways that the NBA stars do. And, the NBA stars, there's, people sitting right at courtside. They're in their short pants and T-shirts and no helmets. And I mean, we do get a little bit of more flavor of them. I think it's a great point. Maybe the skills competition, maybe that's all it should be, is a skills competition.
Just give me all of the players playing Fortnite. Like, I don't care.
Right.
Don't
they
even
all
play the Pro Bowl. Who cares?
They all play. They're all on the sticks all the time. So,
hey, what I want to ask you too about is in Bob in particular. I think you've had an opportunity to talk to Tony Romo. What do you guys think about the job that Tony Romo's doing? I think most people like what he's doing. And I also know, I can remember a few years back, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, he was like a big name on the fantasy scene. He wanted to kind of, make fantasy more likable in the eyes of the league, if you can recall.
Well,
but
he does have the Go NFFC that's in Dallas every year. He's a big part of that, although not a direct hand, but it's his business. And he's, a number of Cowboys have now joined him in that business, including Zeke Elliott. But I just, look, there's a lot of lousy announcing out there. He is not lousy at announcing. I think from someone who enjoys the game, and it's interesting to have a quarterback processing information in real time the way he would in a game. And I mean, there are a lot of quarterbacks who call games who don't do it like that. And I think it does give us an insight. And there are times I can remember, not this year, but last year, where he's literally saying, okay, they're going to run this play. They want to get the ball down. He wants to have 3 seconds left. And damn, that's exactly what happened. There's 3 seconds left, at the end of the next play. And it's just, I think that adds, if you're looking for a color commentator, that's the color I'm looking for. That's exactly what I want. I can see a lot of things for myself, but a lot of the, what he's reading as a quarterback, I think that's, quarterbacks drive this game, and he understands what they're looking at, what the reads are on both sides of the ball. I think it makes it very interesting. I think Kyle probably totally agrees with me.
Yeah, one thing you said early on that really connected with me was you can feel his enjoyment of the game. I truly think there is something so special about a guy who just truly loves the game. Like, he truly just has so much passion for it. And watching that, as opposed to many of the other commentators who I don't doubt really like football, but just Romo feels it on a different level, and it makes you want to like the game more. It makes you have a different passion for the game.
The enthusiasm he has for each snap bleeds through.
It so much does. It makes it such a better experience where it bleeds through to the audience, where because the guy who's explaining the game to you also just loves every snap of it, you want to love every snap of it, and you do, at least I do personally. It's it's not only that he loves it, he's the only guy who hits the Venn diagram of loving the game so much and understanding it so much.
Right. It was a good quarterback.
Yeah, and a good pairing with Jim Nantz, I think, who lets him, have free range and brings some of this out of him, realizing, what he knows. But I think Romo would be spouting a lot of it either way. So I think that was a good way to end this program for this week. I know we're light on the content because it's the bye week, people. We'll get into it in the off season. We'll dig really deep into things we're looking for. We'll maybe look at things from more of a Devy and Dynasty perspective to some degree. Looking at some of the prospects. We'll look at what all the teams' maybe needs are, what the coaching changes mean. We'll get into all that. There'll be a couple more coaching changes to come. The Dolphins heading to grab Brian Flores after this game. The Bengals will be announcing, it looks like, Zach Taylor, the Rams quarterbacks coach. Again, Kyle, Justin, and I all looking to become friends with Sean McVay, so we too can be considered NFL head coaches without any other qualifications other than, hey, Sean, how are you doing, man? So
you're in.
To that. Yes, we're in. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to we'll get through the Super Bowl show, but really looking forward to digging in deep in the off season and making sure you're the best informed owner in your leagues, and that's the goal all the time. So Justin, let's close it out, man.
Yeah, so this show is sponsored by DraftKings, and again, like Bob said, we can dive into the dynasty stuff and the Devy talk, and also best balls we'll do as well.
Oh yes,
right into July and August, and with season long stuff. So it's going to be, Bob, you say it numerous times, you don't get much of a break. It's football's 365, and we appreciate everybody tuning in. It's been a hell of a ride. It's come and gone too quick, but we're going to be around all off season long. And Kyle, it was a nice, we've become a nice trio on this podcast, and I look forward to doing much, much more with it.
Guys, could I bother you for one more question? Because I am still, you guys both said when we were talking about Todd Gurley, I think we have a little bit of time to talk here. When you're talking about Todd Gurley, it's likely just injury. But let me bring you a handful of points that I hate to lob objections and not have an answer, but I truly don't. So, 2 weeks ago, divisional round, Todd Gurley, this is per Next Gen Stats, had his most carries of over, I want to say it was 15 miles an hour, but basically he had one of his fastest games. I think on average it was his fastest game of the season. And that leads me to believe, or at least showing me only that, would say he's healthy. Not only that, but he had his most carries over that mile per hour mark on a lower carry game. So just like on average, he was extremely fast. He did have a lower carry, so maybe that was it. But that would say he was healthy. He didn't appear on the final injury report. And again, this week, although they didn't have practice, or at least they didn't have practice so far, didn't appear on the injury report again.
They did have practice today, and he would practice fully. So
I think that was yesterday, the day before they didn't have practice. But my point being, there are a lot of signs pointing to him being healthy. And also, I think he said something along the lines of he played sorry. He wasn't playing well, which I don't think he was.
Yes.
He was like 2.5 yards per carry. Anderson averaged like 2.75. So it wouldn't say that there was a big difference in play, although, oh my God, Todd Gurley had the one dropped ball for an interception.
Yeah,
dropped.
So, and I thought the timing was interesting that he kind of disappeared after that. But if you watched him on the sidelines doing a lot to try to stay loose, get loose, whatever it was. But I think in the end, for me, you have Todd Gurley, whom you have invested $45 million in.
Right.
And you have C.J. Anderson, who you drug off a couch 3 weeks previous. And granted, he plays great. And again, I will just say this. C.J. Anderson adds to the list of people not doing Le'Veon Bell any favors. That includes James Conner, right? Who lit it up all season long, essentially. And it just demonstrates the running back position where maybe you don't have to invest all the money. I'm just thinking, though, in Todd Gurley's case, clearly a special player, clearly a step above, clearly more angular, I'll say, than one C.J. Anderson. Less circumferentially challenged than C.J. Anderson. No. I'm just, it's curious to me why you would keep that guy off the field as much as you did if he was healthy. Doesn't make sense to give him 4 carries and give C.J. Anderson, well, I don't know, what was it, 16 carries? I get splitting. I get keeping people fresh. This all makes perfect sense to me. But benching a guy, unless it was the drop pass or something, it just seems odd to me. And it's something I'll be watching in the coming days to see if there's any hints or suggestions that he's anything other than just sorry.
Justin, any conspiracy theories?
No, I mean, I would tend to agree that he's dinged up at this point in time. But again, I mean, we know what the NFL season can do to a player, and especially a player that's getting the football as much as anybody, if not more than anybody. And here we are in January, and you've touched the ball 400 times, just as much as Melvin Gordon, just as much as Zeke Elliott. There's only a couple of guys that are like that. I think there's some, evidence, like Bob stated, that, look, why is he on the bike during the game in the NFC Championship? Because Todd Gurley is what essentially got you this far. So what the hell is this, chicken shit version of Jerome Bettis doing with his sweatshirt out, running around the field? It just doesn't make sense. Now, C.J. Anderson's a good running back. Make no mistakes about it. But Todd Gurley is what got you there. So I think Bob's right. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the upcoming days. And there's certainly more that meets the eye at this point in time. There's a lot we don't know.
By the way, what I think will happen is he'll practice fully like he did today. As we're recording this on Wednesday, the bye week injury report came out. Greg Zuerlein, the only player of interest on it for the Patriots. One guy, Dvorchak Wise, is on it. So nobody of interest. Gurley, again, wasn't on it last week. And maybe he is fine. Maybe it is just he's worn down and beat up. If so, that's pretty alarming for the Rams and their fans, because as much as I admire C.J. Anderson, Todd Gurley is a super player who I would like to see touching the ball 20 times in this game, and I think the Rams need him too.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with you. Despite there being some weird evidence of maybe he is healthy, we have an entire season of evidence that he is arguably the best running back in the NFL. So there has to be something like injury. At least that is what the most data we have would say that. So I tend to agree. I'm just really befuddled, but I think we get an awesome redemption narrative, and he scores 3 touchdowns. But that's a story for next week, guys. This has been a great show. We will have another awesome show to close out the season next week. A Super Bowl, props, DFS. I think that's everything. Any final words, anyone? Are we good to pack it in?
Let's pack it in.
Justin?
I tend to agree with Bob. We should probably pack it in. But, one more thing. Well, I can pack it in because it is my show. I was thinking about earlier, guys, how much we talked about Royce Freeman this offseason. And as I'm staring, as we speak tonight, at Philip Lindsay, as Bob says, nobody's doing Le'Veon Bell any favors. How good of a story was Philip Lindsay? Just about as good as the James Conner story. I mean, here we are. We had Brad Evans on the show. I've talked to Cecil Lammy. Like, it was going to be Royce Freeman. Here comes Philip Lindsay. So for all the negative stories like Le'Veon Bell, of course, that was depressing from a fantasy standpoint as well. Here's Philip Lindsay going to the Pro Bowl, a Denver kid, undrafted.
Well, he's not actually going to the Pro Bowl because he just had surgery on the wrist.
Well, right.
So
but
he'll be out 4 to 5 months. I'm going to just say on him, I agree, but there are some interesting numbers, and we'll dig deeper into them over the offseason. But Mike Clay and I talked about this late in the season, and if you look and you break down the yards after contact, Lindsey was horrible at yards after contact, one of the worst in the league. Got pretty good yards before contact. On the other hand, Royce
down was such a sad story, because here we had a Patrick Mahomes story where I was very right. Then you brought me the Philip Lindsay story. Oh, he made a Pro Bowl. But I was wrong, and it makes it a sad story for me.
I will just say that, running back is a position where we all know at the end of the year, somebody is going to have won a title based on players, the performance of players nobody drafted in their fantasy draft.
Yep.
That's just how it's going to be.
Every single year.
Every single year. So keep that in mind, kids, as you move forward.
Now we're at a place to pack it in. Everyone's been an awesome show.
No, wait. I got one more thing. No.
Don't you dare. Don't you dare, Bob. All right. That's been a great show. We've got Bob Harris on Twitter at FootballDieHard, myself at FF Kyle the Kid, and Justin at Justin Lonero. That's it. Thanks for tuning in.